Hello, I'm Peggy Venable, and we're back. You're watching On Point TV, and this is Eyes on Texas. We are lucky to have in the studio today State Representative Steve Toth, who is from House District 15, the Woodlands.
It is.
And Steve Toth has been a real leader in the legislature this session, among other things, talking about CScope and trying to get a handle on and really eliminate this subpar series of lesson plans. And it seems that while we've been talking the previous half hour about the manner in which CScope was introduced, the fact that there should be a forensic audit, or an audit will be taking place from the state auditor's office to look at the money flow regarding CScope and the region service centers. But we really haven't talked some about the more problematic lesson plans, and then what can be done, what can teachers look to rather than CScope, since smaller school districts seem to be those that were using CScope, not all, but a number of smaller school districts. And some, even though in hearing after hearing it was pointed out how poor the lesson plans were, some school districts, shockingly, are still wanting to use CScope. I'm not sure I understand why.
Well, it's not, first off, it's not the teachers that are asking for it. We've put so much emphasis on end of course exams that you have administrators and ISDs running scared that their school, their district is going to be looked upon as a subpar learning institution. And so the CScope has given, the ESCs have given these ISDs a false hope that by implementing this program, they will be teaching the TEKs and will bring their accreditation level, or not their accreditation level, but their standing in the eyes of
and the
T
test scores up.
Yeah, and the test scores up. And
Is
in
that
reality,
happening?
it's not happening. The schools that are using CScope are doing worse. They're not doing better.
Well, we were talking during the break about an aspect of this that we've not even mentioned yet, and that is the fact that many teachers that I've spoken to think that CScope actually embraces the Common Core curriculum.
Correct.
Which this administration, the Obama administration, and the U.S. Department of Education has promoted, but Texas has rejected. Could this be a backdoor way to get Common Core curriculum into Texas schools?
It absolutely is. There's no doubt about it for this reason. Online content exists. McGraw-Hill has online content that is type 1 traditional method of teaching children. This is a time-proven way of teaching that has succeeded. Common Core has failed everywhere that it's been tried, yet liberals continue to push Common Core because it advances a liberal agenda. 2 plus 3 does not equal 4. 2 plus 2 does not equal 5. And yet, in Common Core circles, that's an okay way of teaching kids.
Now, this is an enormous debate across the country on Common Core. We at Americans for Prosperity, and people can check us out on our website, americansforprosperity.org. We are opposed to Common Core and explain why. It's more expensive, it's not more effective. We have numerous problems with the Common Core curriculum. But the bottom line is Texas rejected it.
We did reject it, and the president and his cast of characters has continued to lobby big businesses across the United States to get behind it, telling them, communicating to them that this is a way of advancing education in America. You've seen ExxonMobil as of late and their commercials saying, let's get behind the race to the top and Common Core, that this is a great method by which to teach the future generation of Americans, and it's not. It's a failure. It is a total failure.
Actually, I haven't seen those ads, but I'm not surprised that the Obama administration is using corporations to promote their agenda. We certainly see that in the healthcare market with Enroll America and the insurance companies. But Common Core, since it was rejected in Texas, it seems like no one officially is calling this Common Core, but I do hear teachers and others say that it follows Common Core.
It clearly does,
So-
and if you listen to conservative members of the State Board of Education, and you listen to teachers, and you listen to people like Donna Garner who have promoted and been watchdogs
Right.
for
Retired
Type 1
teacher,
education,
great teacher.
that is, as well as, I'm trying to think of Ginger Russell's mom, Janet.
Right.
These are,
McGregor, I think.
she has written multiple textbooks
Right.
and educational theory, and this is clearly, CScope is clearly Type 2 Common Core.
Let me just bring that up. I noticed that one of our State Board of Education members, Thomas Ratliff of Mount Pleasant, the Region 7 Education Service Center is in his district. He has been very vocal in supporting and embracing CScope. I have seen on the News Journal, I think it's the News Journal is a newspaper in Northeast Texas, maybe the Longview News Journal, excerpts from a speech that he gave talking about, and here's the headline, Ratliff, how Animal Farm and Fahrenheit 451 are relevant in the CScope battle. Frankly, it is the most bizarre piece I've ever read. It makes absolutely no sense to me, but it is bashing the Tea Party for criticizing CScope. It is bashing Senator Patrick. It is really going after folks like you who have raised the battle flag and let people know what is in CScope. And it seems that he is maybe one of the few on the State Board of Education that's really coming out publicly in support of CScope. Now, I understand that the State Board of Education, met recently, and they're not going to meet again until September, and they left CScope kind of on the table. I understand that Barbara Cargill, the chairman of the SBOE, the State Board of Education in Texas, had testified early in session, earlier this year, before Senator Patrick's committee, that she had asked for 6 months to get the lesson plans, and even she was not given the lesson plans for 6 months. She was very critical of the quality of the lesson plans and of the quality of the CScope work. So it's interesting to see. I don't think there's anything new that the State Board of Education members aren't all joining arms and singing Kumbaya and working together on issues.
Right. You look at just how deceitful this whole thing is. I can't get my arms around the fact that a government agency is unwilling to open their books up and show moms and dads what is being taught.
Right.
But what's even harder to understand is that the chairman of the State Board of Education has been frozen out, locked out, kept from being able to see what's in CScope. The chairman of the State Board of Education. I hear myself say it and I can't believe it. But she was not allowed to see it. And I think it was maybe a month or so before the Senate held hearings. I think it was around the end of November or December of 2012 before she was finally, 7 years later, before she was finally allowed to see what was in CScope. And even at that point, they didn't have the capability of reviewing it. Right? And so here we are, just a couple months away from school starting, and now the big surprise. We're going to use CScope. Again, we're going to continue to use CScope. It hasn't been reviewed. It hasn't been reviewed, and the State Board of Education doesn't have any funding to bring people in to do the review process. Again, it's more deceit, obfuscation that the ESCs have continued, for years.
Well, it does seem like a bit of a bait and switch when the Region Service Centers said that they were no longer going to offer lesson plans. They would back away and no longer offer the CScope to the schools. But it's out there. And I know that some Region Service Centers, I understand, were sending emails encouraging teachers to pull down the lesson plans that they like so that they could use it even when CScope goes offline. So I think there's clearly no lights out for CScope right now. And it seems that the bill that passed, 1406, the Senate bill, did require for a review of CScope.
Correct.
But does CScope exist now as CScope? What now is happening with that bill since it passed?
Right,
One would think that.
and here's the, and one of the things that one of the State Board of Education members has asked is that since SB 1406 went forward, there is a mechanism for the State Board of Education to
Review.
oversee it and review it. The problem is, the content still belongs to the taxpayers.
Right.
The ESCs don't have the capability, they don't have the authority to physically give this away. This flawed, deeply flawed content, which has criminal and civil liabilities attached to it by virtue of the fact that it's plagiarized, some of it's plagiarized material.
Let me just ask, what school district, what superintendent would be saying, please, I want to use
Yeah.
CScope, knowing that there could be a liability there for that school district?
Most of these ISDs have no clue. They don't know. They were lied to. I don't believe for one second that a reputable superintendent would knowingly open his
Right.
district up to civil or criminal liability.
Perhaps some letter should be sent to these school districts that had used CScope to inform them that there could be some liability on their part were they to use it. Is that something, clearly we don't know the answer to that yet, and isn't that something that perhaps the Attorney General's office is looking at in terms of the plagiarism and some of the other legal or liability?
I think it's the responsibility when you make a mess, we teach our kids, you go clean the mess up.
Right.
And it should be the responsibility of the education service centers for them to go out and do the right thing. This is an opportunity for them to just clean their mess up and do the right thing. And go to the ISDs and say, the folks that we brought in to develop CScope, they did some things wrong. And it's our even though that they're gone, it's our responsibility to clean up after them. And to say that, yeah, there was some wrongdoing here that we need to take care of and we need to make it right. And it should be their responsibility, the ESCs, to go to these independent school districts and say, this is what happened, this is what is going on.
But instead, it seems that they have, some have sent communication to the school districts to pull this program down. Let me just back up and say, though, I will speak from my perspective, and I've written this and talked about this to groups across the state. I believe the Region Service Centers betrayed the public trust.
Totally.
When they developed, sold, and implemented CScope and how they did it, and I have absolutely no confidence the Region Service Centers will do the right thing for us. Quite the opposite. I believe that they have tried to cut and run, thinking that by virtue of saying that they will no longer offer CScope and distancing themselves from it now, I believe they believe that could diminish the impact, or at least diminish their responsibility moving forward as these forensic audits are taking place and as the AG's office is asking questions, Lieutenant Governor's office is asking questions, you are, Senator Patrick and others. It seems like they got a pretty sweet deal if they get off scot-free with that. Now, many of us, I was among those that was most concerned when the bill passed that allowed the Region Service Centers to slip not just 2 years, but 4 years before they are subject to the sunset review. And the sunset review, folks, doesn't mean that the agency is shut down.
Correct.
It truly is a review of their whether or not they're fulfilling their mission statement, how they're doing their work. It really is something to give them and the legislature feedback on how they're doing. Clearly, the Region Service Centers would have gotten a scathing report, at best, a scathing report out of any true sunset review this time around. So are they thinking that maybe people will forget by 2019?
Yeah, I think that's what they're banking on. And as you look at some of these ESCs, the way they pay directors, executive directors, should be an absolute embarrassment. I said to one of the House members, I said, do you have any idea what these ESC's directors make? And this individual said to me, he said, Steve, all these guys don't make anything. He said, my ESC director, executive director, probably makes $40,000 or $50,000. I'll call him Bob. I said, Bob, how about $195,000? And he said, oh, no way. No way, Steve. I said, we've done the open records request on their payroll. And he said, the executive director here is making $180,000, and this guy's one, it was actually $185,000. The directors underneath him, 5 of them across, were making in excess of $150,000. These have become retirement homes
You bet.
for superintendents.
You bet. So could it be that some of these smaller school district superintendents were buying their retirement plans?
Yeah, this is the gross waste of money, Peggy, in the school system, across the state of Texas. Texas has become the 5th. The Texas education system has become the 5th largest employer in the world. That's not my claim.
That's right.
Senator Patrick has said that. Senator Williams has said that.
Right.
Multiple peoples from
We're a corporation.
It would be the 5th largest employer in the world. Just a generation ago, for every 5 teachers, there was only 1 non-teaching position in the state of Texas. For every 5 teachers, 1 non-teaching position. Today, it's 1 to 1.
Right.
For every teacher, there's one non-teaching position.
Right.
This is the gross inefficiency. And if the kids aren't learning, what do?
Mm-hmm.
We just throw money at it. And that is all that Texas has done for the past 20 years. In Texas, and scores have not gone up,
Right.
they have trended down.
It reminds me of a Reagan quote, and I hate to quote Reagan imprecisely, but I will. In this instance, he had said that if a restaurant served a rotten hamburger, they would have the FDA, everybody would be on their tail, ripping their licenses. But if a school offers a rotten education, what do? We throw more money at it, and more money and more money. So the fact is, you hit the nail on the head.
What's his other quote? And I'm gonna mangle this one a little bit too. If it's running, tax it. If it stumbles, regulate it. If it stops moving, subsidize it. And
that's not
what
he proposed doing. He said that's what
but that's what the federal government does, and that's what we've done with education. Right. The more it fails, the more money we throw at it. The performing schools that are performing really well, we don't reward them.
Right.
We penalize them. And the schools that are not doing well, we just give them more money.
And let me just, and we have about 10 minutes left or 7 minutes left. Let me also point out another point that here, what we're talking about are government monopoly public schools. So we know CScope is actually in some charter schools and some private schools.
Correct.
So let's lay that on the table and be totally honest here. But as parents, many parents, particularly those in inner cities, the parents with the least means, are really forced to send their kids to public schools. They can't homeschool, they can't afford to private school their kids, and there may not be charter schools. So they often can't afford to move to a more affluent neighborhood where they want to go to school.
You look at a lot of inner city children, they're growing up in a single parent household, almost 72% of them. Nearly 80% of them, Harold Dutton shared the statistic on the House floor, and it should grieve all of us, but he said in his area nearly 80% of the kids will not make it past their sophomore year. They will just drop out. I sit on both the Criminal Jurisprudence Committee and the Corrections Committee.
So you know what happens to those kids.
And 90+% of those kids are going to end up in prison. 300,000+ children across the state of Texas are in failing schools, grossly failing schools. These kids have no hope, they have no future, and yet...
And they're let me back up and say, you said inner city, these are predominantly what? Minority students,
poor kids.
Yeah.
And we want to say to them, you don't deserve a chance. We want to say to those parents, government wants to say to those parents, you don't deserve the same opportunity, the same choice that wealthy Americans have.
That's exactly what is being said. Now, we know there was a vote this legislative session. It was an amendment to the House Appropriations Bill. I want to say Amendment 71, but don't hold me to that. I may not have it correct on the top of my head. But it was by Abel Herrero, state representative, that represents a portion of Corpus Christi and Robstown in South Texas, who wanted to deny any funding going to public schools or any debate or discussion of school choice this session. In that discussion on the floor of the House, he said he sends his children to private schools.
Right. Now, what was really interesting about that debate, Abel's a great guy, but he's flawed. His thinking is grossly flawed on this. At the back mic was another Democrat, Representative Dutton,
Right.
Who was challenging him about the fact that he sends his kids to a private school.
Right.
Why? Because he can afford it. But we obviously shouldn't. Again, this is this deeply flawed thinking. We shouldn't give underprivileged people that same choice.
You know, what I heard him say was let them eat cake.
Yeah.
That's what I heard him say.
Marie
Now,
Antoinette.
I guess the key is these are all education dollars. Sometimes people think these education dollars are being committed to schools. Many of us believe these dollars should be committed to the child.
Yeah,
For their
money
education.
should follow the child. It should absolutely follow the child, so that school districts have to work for it. And if you are failing as a teacher, individual campus leaders, principals should have the authority. Don't give me the responsibility without giving me the authority. I don't think there's any greater way of frustrating a leader than to give them the responsibility, but without giving them the authority. And that's what we've done to a lot of principals. We're saying you're responsible for improving the quality of education. You're responsible for getting test scores up. But oh, by the way, you can't remove a failed teacher.
But when we have said to them, we will lift those mandates if you will agree to allow school choice or whatever. No, they'd rather have those mandates.
Yeah.
So they've set themselves up for failure
Correct.
too. They're part of that system. They're part of the monopoly that seems to just perpetuate itself. We need to break that cycle of the poorest kids being assigned to the very worst schools and having no chance or no way out.
Right.
So I think CScope is certainly, I think, a reason why parents should have the opportunity to choose the school that they think will best fit their kids' needs, because then parents could have a chance to say, Hutto, if you're going to insist on using CScope, I'm going to take my child out and take those education dollars to a school where I like what they're putting in the lesson plans and in the classrooms.
I agree.
Needs to happen. Now, the next step with CScope, I guess now that we see the audit is going to be underway, may we invite you back and have you kind of fill us in?
I know the State Board of Education, I spoke with Barbara Cargill about 2 to 3 hours ago, and she said that the review of CScope is going to come up at the end of September, State Board of Education meeting. Discussion. They hope by then to hear a little bit more from John Keel, the State Auditor's Office, as well as the Attorney General's Office on possible legal ramifications of plagiarism.
Wow. Well, I guess the buyer beware for those who think that they can take this lesson plan for free and put it in their schools. They may have gotten themselves into a real mess if they choose to
Sure.
do that. There's much more to be uncovered about CScope. I think that Region Service Centers maybe hoped it was buried, but thanks to folks like you, people like David Dewhurst, and certainly our Attorney General, CScope is being further investigated. I know Senator Patrick is pushing for that also. And I guess I'm disappointed. I was hoping that it might be on a call for
Yeah, we've
session.
pushed for it, but we couldn't get the governor to add it to it. I don't blame the governor for it.
It's another whole.
Man, I'll tell you that'd be another 2 hours. Sorry.
So true, it would. You've given us a lot of great information. Given us a good feel for where things are right now, because this is as slippery as it can be. It's really hard to keep track of just what's going on in CScope at any given moment, because it's gone, it's not gone, it's being offered, it's not. And I think in the final analysis, we will encourage parents to talk to your children's teachers, find out what is in those lesson plans, talk to your principal, talk to your superintendent, ask if they're using the CScope lesson plans, and there are alternatives out there. They don't have to use those lesson plans. Representative Toth, I want to thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Peggy, for all that you're doing to educate us on what's going on out there.
Well, you're doing the heavy lifting. I'm glad to talk about it and to cheer you on as you move forward.
Thank you.
To do what's right for Texas kids. I think that's one thing that we all care about, what goes on in education in Texas, and that's why this topic is so controversial and such a hot topic in Texas. You have been watching On Point Television. I'm Peggy Venable, and this is Eye on Texas. Thanks so much for joining us.
You'd be dismissed from your teaching position.
Just for sharing a lesson plan with parents, which is actually required by state law for lesson plans to be made available.
To parents, right? Correct. And what this is, it's actually an online content and curriculum, which clearly we're not against online education and online teaching. It's the wave of the future. If you've got an iPhone or an iPad, I can remember my kids coming home from school and Katie or Connor or Hayden carrying a 40-pound book bag. I'm convinced that they're going to walk like the Hunchback of Notre Dame when they're in their 50s. I mean, it's just crazy. And it's neat that you can use an iPad and it can have all of your books on it. Right. So it's clearly not the medium that we have an issue with. It's the content. It's very deeply flawed content. It was meant to be a moneymaker, I think, for the education service centers. But even more than that, the content has a decided shift to the left, socially, economically. It stands against everything that we as Texans hold dear. I didn't come to Texas. I left New York because of the values and mores that Texas holds dear and true. And this is an affront to everything we really hold dear and true in Texas.
And Texans are not averse to their textbook wars. We've been engaged in battling over textbooks, content, and ideology for years. But this really went a step beyond that, because at least the textbooks are required to be reviewed by the State Board of Education before state dollars are used to purchase these approved textbooks that really complement the curriculum and the knowledge and skills that are expected to be taught in our schools.
Right.
Whereas these are lesson plans which are not anything that the state would normally be involved in approving or reviewing, except that perhaps for the fact that it was actually offered to the school districts by a state entity. Is this where this maybe falls in that gray area that requires some
CScope was developed with state dollars. The education service centers illegally created a 501c3. There are two types of nonprofit organizations. There's a 501c3 and a 501c4. A 501c4 is a not-for-profit. A 501c3, like a church or any kind of educational institution, is a not-for-profit and tax deductible. They have created a 501c3, but when a state agency does that, they need to come to the Texas State Legislature, the House and the Senate, and put a bill through committee approving, getting approval to, and actually I think they can just put it through a committee. I don't think it has to go to the full legislature, but they have to get
I can't place a state agency that's done that, though.
Yeah, but they actually have to do it. And
There
is a process. They need to do it, and they never did it. And this all came out in the Senate hearings that they absolutely, and it's because the whole effort to keep this thing cloaked in
Right.
silence.
Well, let me point out then, the 501c3 that they created, I think was called the TESCCC, the Texas Education Service Center Curriculum Collaborative, or something
Correct.
like that. But by virtue of them having created a 501c3, I recall having written to it, asking to attend a meeting or to get some material, and I got a email back from someone on the Region Service Center letterhead or email address saying that because they were a C3, they did not have to comply with open meetings laws or with public information requirements. So it was really a state entity and state employee hiding behind, as I would say, a
Shell.
nonprofit shell organization denying public access to the information. Now, why do you say shell? Tell me about this 501c3.
Well, no money actually ran through the 501c3, that's why would you create a 501c3,
Right.
right? Unless it was to guard the money from a tax consequence. And no money actually ran through it. This was nothing more than a way of keeping this cloaked.
So the 501c3, did they have employees or an address or a telephone number?
No, and it was actually, there wasn't an address, there wasn't a phone number. It was held out of the ESC 13 here in Austin. But yeah, I mean, all the traditional things, a website, some information,
Right.
none of it.
None of that. So really, that's one element, just the cloak of secrecy, but also that being used to deny the public any information on how they were operating, their meetings, or their material. It seemed like that's what that C3 appeared to be used for,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
my office did a open records request for their finances, and millions and millions of dollars has run through ESC 13 and what they basically sent us was about a 6-page Word document. Anyone that understands anything about finance knows that this was a grotesque underreporting of exactly what was being done.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason you would do this and put this document together is to obfuscate, lie, mislead from people that you are accountable to, elected officials, about what was really going on.
Wow. Well, let's do a little bit of math in our head here, perhaps. When you said hundreds of millions of dollars,
I don't know about hundreds of millions, tens of millions of dollars.
Tens of millions of dollars. I apologize. I didn't mean to misstate
Sure.
that. It seems that school districts were not sold but rented the CScope lesson plans at a cost, is it, of maybe, I think, $7 to $8 per pupil?
Yeah, we saw the number as low as $5 to as high as $8 per pupil.
And so then the school district would pay the Region Service Center.
Correct. Their
For
individual
that
Region
material.
Service Center. It didn't go to ESC 13.
Right.
It would go to their individual service center.
I see. Then they would pay $5 to $8 times the number of students they had. And that would be each year that
Correct.
they used it. It
Correct.
wasn't like they bought this, like you buy a textbook and you can use it year after year.
Right.
But they kind of rented this lesson plan, which parents couldn't see, which the public was largely unaware of. So if I understand correctly, about 850 to 875 school districts.
Right. It
have
represents,
actually used.
it's roughly 78% of the schools
Right.
across the state of Texas. It represents about 33% of the children
Right.
across the state of Texas.
Okay, if we have 5 million kids in the state of Texas, then we're probably talking about under 2,000 students. Under 2 million students. My apologies. We have about almost 5 million kids in Texas. Now, it's mainly because there are so many schools, but so few, such a smaller percentage of the students, but really the smaller schools that we're using.
Correct.
This, right?
It's because it's both content and it's curriculum planning.
Right.
The bigger schools, Dallas ISD, Houston ISD, Conroe ISD, they have they have curriculum planning departments.
Right.
And the smaller schools don't have that. So CScope actually met a need that these smaller districts felt like they had, which was someone to plan how the content runs through the school year so that they could meet the testing
Right.
and, of course, STAR exams.
Right. Well, we might get back to that in a minute if we
Sure.
have time, because I know some teachers are claiming that teachers will do a better job teaching the lesson plans if they wrote them.
Well,
And
you know,
if they know those lesson plans
it's
well.
funny
so-
because I was criticized by a teacher on Twitter for the demise of CScope and how I must be anti-education and what rock did I crawl out from under, and I tweeted back and I said, you obviously must not be a classroom teacher, because I haven't had one classroom teacher that has called my office, sent me an email, sent me a tweet, sent me a Facebook message or post saying that they liked CScope, and the guy admitted that he was the band director.
Oh, I see.
which is just typical, because
Right.
teachers hate this. Teachers get into teaching because they want to inspire kids to great things, and all of us can look back when we were growing up of one or two teachers that just really inspired us,
You bet.
right? All of us can, and that's why people go into teaching in the first place. It's not so that they can recite something out of CScope. Anybody can do that, but they go into it because they want to inspire kids to greatness, and CScope does not allow them to do that.
You know, as a matter of fact, I saw an article in the Austin American Statesman, which I'll pull a quote from that and share that with you in a few minutes. But basically, a curriculum specialist said that the material is about average, or just above par. It's not like it's excellent material, that the lesson plans aren't truly spectacular.
Well, some of
lesson
it's outstanding because it was plagiarized from McGraw-Hill.
Well, let's
And-
talk about that.
And that's
Problems
another
that
big
causes.
big problem, is that where they were deficient, where they couldn't come up with content, they simply stole it. And the funny thing is, at one point when lawmakers, when parents were saying, hey, we want access to this content, we want to see what's being taught, they sent that request to the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General spoke with them and then sent a letter out to the parents saying, hey, this is copyrighted information, it needs to be protected because it was developed by the ESCs. Well, actually, the ESCs lied about it because they didn't admit the fact that they stole content from McGraw-Hill, which now who now is liable for the theft of that plagiarized
Well-
material? Is the ISD? Is the independent school district liable? Is the teacher liable? Is the are the superintendent, is the superintendent or the board of, the school board, are they liable, or is the ESC
Well, we haven't actually gotten to be able to ask that question of our audience very well, because we haven't talked about what the Region Service Centers have done with CScope. Then let's go back to that
Sure.
question as we look at some school districts that continue to want to use CScope. But what happened this legislative session? The Region Service Centers came to an agreement with some legislators. Can you kind of share what happened there
Sure.
regarding CScope?
There was a House bill, House Bill 570, and there was a Senate Bill 1406, and both of them were to put CScope under the purview of the State Board of Education. Just prior to SB 1406 made it through the process quicker than my bill. Prior to SB 1406 being voted on in the House, the Education Service Centers, ESC 17, reached an agreement with Senator Patrick that CScope would be done away with, that the content would absolutely go away. And in exchange for CScope going away, the ESCs would have their sunset date moved from 2013 to 2019. So
Wow.
this
Right.
is a huge thing,
You
because
bet.
2015 to 2019. So it moved their sunset date, or a possible time which they could be done away with, by 4 years.
Or at least review. Let's talk about what sunset means. But
Sure.
now, first let me just make sure that our viewers understand that the Region Service Centers actually made an agreement that not only would they no longer offer CScope, but that they would no longer offer lesson plans. Now, let's back up. It looks like they I'm not sure what they paid for CScope, but if there were even 2 million students a year using CScope, that might be a conservative figure. At, let's say, even as little as the smallest amount I've seen is $5 per pupil per year. We're talking about $10 million
a year, right?
A year, and it had been in use for a number of years. And I think that $5 per pupil, frankly, I don't know any school that was charged that. I heard it was more than that.
It was.
And on top of that, they had teacher training and they had other things that they added onto that. So the region service centers were, you're right, making easily tens of millions of dollars off this, maybe a year even, maybe even in 1 year. So they agreed to no longer offer CScope and stop offering lesson plans altogether. So many people, I think, thought CScope is dead. It's not going to be offered in the classrooms because there were such strict parameters under which it could be used or shared. Though granted, Senator Patrick and you had demanded that parents be given access to it, and that, but let me back up too and say,
Sure.
Parents weren't even given access to it, in part because it was so either poorly or cleverly prepared that the tests were on the lesson plans along with the test answers. So if the online lesson plans were shared with parents, the parents would also then be getting the test answers and the test questions.
Sure.
So that seems like certainly an enormous shortcoming unless it was intentional.
Correct. Right.
But having said that, so the region service centers made this deal that they weren't going to offer the lesson plans anymore. So then, who does CScope, who do those lesson plans belong to?
Well, very clearly they belong to the people of Texas and the state of Texas because they were developed with state funds. The ESCs are not in a position to give content away for free, especially such deeply flawed content that has financial ramifications as it pertains to an audit by State Auditor John Keel, as well as civil or criminal liabilities as well by virtue of the fact that they have plagiarized material from McGraw-Hill.
Well, and let me just say in regard to, we'll get back to the audit. I'm interested in talking about that. But I saw one of the lesson plans that you're referring to. It was plagiarized from McGraw-Hill textbook. It wasn't simply rewritten or retyped. It was actually copied directly from that textbook, was it not?
Yeah, it was a multiple choice. The ones that I've seen, they've been multiple choice questions. The sentence structure wasn't changed up at all. Even the order, ABC,
I thought it was
D,
exact copy from that.
It was exactly copied. They didn't try and even hide the fact that they were plagiarizing.
Did they take the McGraw-Hill?
Yeah, they took that out.
Interesting. So
they made sure that they took that out. Yeah.
They knew they should not have been doing
that. Yeah, absolutely.
Clearly.
Sure.
Clearly. So that's the plagiarism aspect of it. Now, we've talked about the money flow or lack, our inability to follow the money. When it is regarding CScope, that there was a 501c3 entity put in place that no money ran through. So there was no transparency there, no 990s that were filed as nonprofits are required to file. So it seems that the public is really in the dark as to how much money was brought in, where that money went, or any of the financial dealings surrounding or regarding CScope. If I remember correctly, I asked one of the Region Service Center financial officers if they had a line item for CScope in their budgets, and they said they did not. Now, one would think that an agency that has a project that brings in tens of millions of dollars would at least have a line item, if not numerous ones, on their ledger so that they can track those dollars, but they don't, right?
Correct.
So what can be done so that taxpayers and the public has a better idea just what happened with these dollars?
First off, I would call the governor's office, I'd call the attorney general's office, and I would demand that the forensic audit goes forward. And
So
the Attorney
there's-
General looks into this wrongdoing.
Right,
We haven't even discussed the content
right.
and how deeply flawed the content is. Everything from promotion of communism and the absolutely trying to discredit capitalism, to what they've tried to do to our founding fathers. The way they have rewritten history is offensive.
Well, I think that the content is certainly how most of the public got to know about CScope.
Right.
And then when people started digging in, it started getting murky and murkier and dirtier in appearance. So you've brought up this important point about a forensic audit. I know the Lieutenant Governor told Americans for Prosperity, Texas activists on a conference call sometime around April that he would ask for a state audit for CScope. I've heard other people talk about an audit. Do we have confirmation that an audit is underway?
We do. In fact, I heard from the state auditor's office today that Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst did move ahead with that request, and he has been on top of that, and an audit should commence in the next 60 to 90 days.
Wow. Now, do we have any idea how long an audit takes?
You know,
I have to say I don't.
It really depends. You know, is it bigger than a bread box? How many
Right,
tools are
moving
there
parts,
are there in Batman's belt?
Right.
You know,
We don't know.
We don't really know how deep the rabbit hole is.
Right. So I guess the important thing is, and this is really new information for our viewers, that a forensic audit or an audit following the money trail is going to be done. It has been requested, I know, by Lieutenant Governor David Dewhurst. I think you have also pushed
Correct.
for it and asked for that, and thank you for that. We're visiting with State Representative Steve Toth from House District 15, who has played an enormous role this legislative session in one of the most controversial issues in education in Texas today, and that is a CScope lesson plan.
Cleanse, balance, build. I'd like to add love to that, but I won't. It's kind of corny. Cleanse, balance, build, and love. Right? How important is that to healing, really? Right? Oh, don't be corny, Dr. Lindsay. Stick with the health and healing. No. Cleanse, balance, build, and love. We cleanse our body. We cleanse. We cleanse our lungs. We cleanse our fluids. We cleanse our food. We cleanse our diet. And we cleanse our digestive system. This is how we become toxic. Poor elimination, we address that. Poor diet, we address that. Stress causes acid. Overconsumption, we are eating emotionally and socially to death. Take the cleanse and go to the bathroom 2 or 3 times a day. You know that that's what's causing the problem, right? And the body will come alive, and all of a sudden you'll feel like you're 19 years old again. You can't go to sleep because you have so much energy. And life is incredible. If you're taking the cleanse, your body has to heal. It's not because the cleanse is healing your body, because the cleanse doesn't heal your body. None of this heals your body. It gives your body what your body needs to heal itself. That's the magic here. That's the epiphany. The epiphany is that we understand that these products don't cure or heal anything. So what we do at Genesis Pure is we masterfully supply your body with the nutrients and the building blocks that your body needs. And the immune system, it's like the cavalry coming in. When you take this, it's like you're on the battlefield and you're battling all of this. and you're slaying and you're fighting and you're fighting and you keep on fighting, and all of a sudden you start putting the nutrients in, and it's like the cavalry coming in and taking over. This product cleanses and detoxifies all 7 channels of elimination. All of these herbs target the human body multiple times to detoxify all the pictures that I've been showing you, but most importantly, get the king, the most important of all eliminative organs, the bowels, moving. It makes you have smooth, easy, wonderful digestion. It gives you renewed energy, mental energy, physical energy, emotional energy, psychological energy, sexual energy. It gives you energy on all levels, because the last time I checked, we were all connected. Everything in our body is connected. Balance. We're out of balance. The acid's killing us. The hormones are out of whack. When we're out of balance, it affects every cell and tissue in the human body. Over-acidification interferes with life itself, leading to all sickness and all disease. This is how we balance. For daily maintenance, the Goyen and the cell water, nothing can come close. Goyen contains a proprietary blend of 20 warm and cool superfruits, herbs and other fruits, each of which have numerous benefits of their own. In combination, however, the Goyen formula is unmatched in its ability to induce systemic whole body balance, which translates into optimal physical and mental function. The key benefits: supports healthy energy, mood, antioxidant, balances the chemistry, increases vigor, reduces tension, depression, especially depression and fatigue, and supports and balances the hormones. That is the easiest way over long term, over daily use, to not interrupt your life, to balance the body chemistry, is with the Goyen. Let's build our body up. We have to build our body. I would say that we're probably better at building now than we even are at cleansing. We become nutritionally depleted and deficient from fast food, junk food, from food grown in depleted soil. We're all living chronically with depleted levels of vitamins and minerals. All of us. Because of our soil and because of our diet and because of our stress and because of our fast food. You don't have to have it all gone to die. You just have to have little bits of it gone to die slowly. We build our body with daily build. We build our body with our energy sticks. We build our body with our meal replacement shakes. And this is the foundation. The foundation is what we are being fed and what we are doing. Change. Change. Do not be sheep. Break the mold. Change. Be your own man, be your own woman, make the change, make your house a healing home, and break that mold. Break the mold. It doesn't matter what mom and dad did.
Dr. Lindsay Duncan is a pioneer in the superfruit industry.
The Indiana Jones of the health movement.
Naturopathic doctor and celebrity nutritionist.
His work with Demi Moore, Mark Jacobs, and Courtney Cox, among others.
Dr. Lindsay Duncan.
Joining us now is certified nutritionist Dr. Lindsay Duncan.
As you can tell, Dr. Lindsay Duncan draws a crowd here.
So what exactly is a superfood? I mean, we think of blueberries and things like that.
Superfood is a food that has a tremendous amount of nutrients in it. So if you took the 6 superfoods that we brought today, they're going to have almost 1,000 nutrients. This is the guarana seed, and this seed right here is loaded with energy-producing compounds. Mix it in a little bit of juice, and don't take it at nighttime, whatever you do. Yeah. No, you'll be cleaning the closet, you'll be cleaning the garage, you'll be cleaning things that you've never cleaned before.
The flavonoids is what helps us to relax. So historically, hundreds of years of experience with relaxation, even treating epilepsy, for stress problems, the list goes on and on and on. It's a fantastic herb with great research behind it.
It's about getting more nutrients into those 10 trillion cells that make up the human body. Dopamine, sirtuin, C. buckthorn, theobromine, beta-carotene or vitamin A, resveratrol, antioxidant, guarana, You can juice your vegetables. You can get a rainbow salad, rainbow fruit, and just get all the
Eat the
colors.
colors of the rainbow. If it's bright and colorful, eat it.
Perfect. Just do about 4 drops. I'll do 4. And isn't that awful? Kale has a very rich history. Dates back to 600 BC. Really high in alkaloids, really high in chlorophyll. Mother Nature gave us food and gave us a lot of cleansing foods, and we're going to go over those today. And that's the best way to cleanse the body is with juice, with lemon, with fiber. And how does it taste?
I feel like I'm getting taller already. Look at that. See? I am. You say use a hair dryer and some Epsom salt.
The colder flu or virus can't live at 98.6 degrees. This is going to be 100 degrees.
Is that going to burn your nose?
If you get too close, yes. Do it for about 4 minutes, pull it away, let it go up into the nostrils. You got to catch it early.
Yeah.
And it'll change the temperature in your nostrils, which will kill the virus or the flu immediately. The immune system builds up and induces a fever, burns out what it is you're trying to fight, and you get great results. The fever's gone. Silica strengthens the hair. The pericarp is the purple part. It cleanses the heart and the entire cardiovascular system. And people in America have got to start looking at food as their medicine. 1,000 years ago, there wasn't an EMS or an emergency room to go to. The local healers had to use food and had to use plants. A glass of red wine has about a half of 1 milligram of the active compound resveratrol in it. The lycopene in tomatoes, if it's cooked, acts as a natural block to UV radiation and a sunscreen.
This is a sex drink right here.
Exactly. Oh! You look marvelous.
Doctor, kiss me.
Because blood carries nutrients, and the nutrients in your bloodstream will feed your hair, and your hair will get stronger and more beautiful. Kirsten Dunst, Gwyneth Paltrow, Jen Aniston, and basically most of Hollywood is following some type of alkaline diet.
Meet Dr. Lindsay Duncan, whose clientele includes fashion designer Marc Jacobs, NFL running back Reggie Bush, and Mrs. Ashton Kutcher.
I had Demi Moore on pretty much a total alkaline diet, and she's been on an alkaline diet for over 20 years.
Because if you get it, you'll do part of it. If you do part of it, you'll see the change. If you see the change, you'll want more. And if you want more, you will do more.
Here's Junior Whitaker, MD, America's Wellness Doc, and I have one of my favorite guests on the line now, the Indiana Jones of the health movement. He travels all over the world seeking out the tropical jungles of the world to harvest mangosteen, goji, acai, and noni, and provide us with these survival fruit juices that will make us much healthier. Welcome to the show, Lindsay Duncan.
Now, you blew everyone's mind the last time you appeared on the show with the superfruits, the cleanse.
Yeah.
I think, you started a revolution.
Get it all cleaned out, right?
Yes, and the response has just been overwhelming from all the girls, the Cosmo girls who've done the cleanse. They love it. I've been taking the